Great. If you're joining us, thanks for your patience with us as we get everything going. We are going to continue, we're going to continue looking at this video of the installation in the gallery right now of Meticulous.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Seriously, yes.
Yeah, the work just looks so stunning in this space, both of you.
I was so happy to hear you were going to use this space.
I get so many different lighting effects throughout the day.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to just watch this video go through and with the show, and then as more people join us, then I will start to chat with the artists. I love those pieces, Reid.
Oh, thank you.
The salt and pepper sets, they're just beautiful.
They're just a joy to make. And, you know, I see them as a family grouping. They're all, each component is a member of the family. And so using them is like having a little personal conversation with individual members of the family. I hear a kibitzer in the background here at our house. Yeah. Oh, those are nice on the black as well.
Yeah, they look really great that way.
Yeah. Sandy, the pieces are small, but the scale is just wonderful. It's like, you know, if you were, they could be 10 feet tall and still be as strong. They're as strong now as if they were 10 feet tall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a dilemma, especially in the beginning of presenting my work, even though it was this small, if there should be a scale indicator in the image. And Ruth Kohler said, why don't you just leave it out and people can imagine them for their, you know,
right.
Yeah.
They think it'd be best.
Great.
And every once in a while I'll get a comment saying, oh, I didn't realize they were so small. And I'll generally comment back saying, I just hope you're disappointed. And they'll say, oh no, it's like a treasure on the beach. So,
very good. True.
Okay. Well, I'm going to formally get this party going. So welcome everyone to the Abel Contemporary Gallery's virtual artist reception for Meticulous. This is new work by Sandra Byers and Reid Schoonover. If you are not familiar with us, the Abel Contemporary Gallery is a gallery located just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, in Stoughton. We're in a beautiful old converted tobacco warehouse, and we represent about 100 artists from across the United States. I'm Teresa Abel. I'm the owner and art director of Abel Contemporary, and I am so pleased to be joined today by Reid Schoonover and Sandra Byers to talk about their fabulous show. They are both Wisconsin artists. Sandra has studied at Cornell University, and she is a well-known Wisconsin artist known for these beautiful, exquisite porcelain sculptures. She is in some wonderful collections across the United States, including the Fuller Craft Museum in Brockton, Massachusetts, the John Michael Kohler Art Center in Sheboygan, the Racine Art Museum in Racine, Wisconsin, the Tweed Museum of Art at the University of Minnesota in Duluth. She has also twice been a resident at the John Michael Kohler Art Center, and she is also shown at the James Watrous Gallery at the Overture Center in Madison, Wisconsin, as well as many times exhibiting at the Smithsonian Craft Show in Washington, D.C. So, Sandra, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself or something you think we would like to know?
Basically, I love porcelain. I started out, after I graduated from college, I was, one thing of importance is I'm married to a potter. His name is Reid Byers, makes great functional pots and of a totally different scale than I do. But we got married the very end of college. And at that point, he was an economist. And so we moved to New York City, and he works for the Ladies Garment Workers Union, and said, well, you can be a potter if you want. And I go, great. So we lived in a loft for a year or two there, and then moved out to Madison, and then where we live now, which is Rock Springs, which is about an hour northwest of Madison. And we live in a big old school building, and you'll see a picture of that later. I started making small functional stoneware pieces, very thin, and very gradually, and quite realized that porcelain might be the right medium for me, and it might be translucent. So tried it. It was right, and I found that making little things that spoke of my walks on the beach and my walks in the field just gave me a voice, and porcelain seemed to be the right thing for me. But that smallness, there are just so many wonderful small things in this world, and so much in this world is, bigger is better. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. And if you are overlooking the little, you're missing an awful lot in this world. So I do a little bit of throwing, but most of my work is hand built and thrown. Hand built and pinched and carved. And you'll get to see some video later of how I work. So it's a great honor to be part of this. And I hope you'll ask questions if I haven't covered things. So thank you.
Oh, that's great. And you know what? I love, there's going to be a video later of Sandra working. And if you've ever met Sandra, and I don't know if you do this, Sandy, but when you talk about your work, you use your hands.
Right.
And there's some connection with the way that you make the pieces. I love that. And people will see that later in the video.
I was actually wondering how I would get through this today without my hands being a major part of it. The way I describe Mobius is a lot of hand movement. Thanks.
Yeah. Great. And then we also have the wonderful Reid Schoonover joining us today. And Reid, you are also a Wisconsin artist who makes exquisite, meticulous work. And not only is your ceramics just stunning, but you're one of those people who can do two things equally fabulously. So it's almost an embarrassment how good of a woodworker you are, as well as a ceramicist. You have a BAE from the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh and an MFA from the University of Montana. And you like to mention that it was important that you studied with Paul Donhauser. You also are in some wonderful collections, including the Halter Museum in Helena, Montana, the John Michael Kohler Art Center in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and the Smithsonian, and you've shown at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., among lots of other places. So Reid, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, it's a little hard to hear things about oneself to begin with, but yes, I'm a Wisconsin boy. I'm an Oshkosh boy, excuse me, and didn't get into the art world until I got to college, where I went to high school in Oshkosh. There were no art programs available at the time, but there was woodworking. So I took a lot of woodworking classes. So my wood roots go back quite a ways. Gosh, I don't know what else to say except that when I did go to college, and I'm one of those non-trad students. I quit high school, joined the Army, realized that that was not the life for me ultimately, but started college in the Army and then went to UW Oshkosh. Was one of Paul Downhauser's first 7 students when he was there, when he came to the university. Paul Downhauser's, along with Rudy Audio, my 2 major professors, undergraduate and graduate school. And anyway, Paul got me into clay, and I've never looked back. So clay and wood, two media that were almost competing until one day I decided to start joining them. And
we're so glad you did.
Yeah. Well, I've not shown a lot over my lifetime because I've dedicated my life to teaching. Fortunately, I've had a great teaching career. I've taught on just about every level, from kindergarten through graduate students at one time or another. And then after retiring, I just decided to work full time. As I said, joining the 2 media, and this is the result of it. It's rewarding, and the work for me, the work is completion of a lifetime of teaching and learning, and so I guess I don't know what else to say. Except graduate school was great because I met my wife there. She was an undergrad, and we married during my last year of school and her last year of school there, and she consented to come back to Wisconsin from Montana. So
good. That's great.
It's been a good life.
Fantastic. Well, so also with us today are Lauren Miller, who's gallery associate, and Ann Orlowski, who is the assistant gallery director. And so we're going to have both artists talk about a few specific pieces from the show. We also have some videos of them in their studios that we will be showing throughout the reception today. If anyone watching has any questions, you can type those in. And Lauren will be paying attention to that. And if it seems very pertinent to the exact piece we're talking about, she might interrupt. But we will pay attention to all your questions. And if we don't get to them right away when you ask them, we will open it up for a Q&A at the end, and we'll make sure that we have time to read all your questions and have them answered by the artist. So Lauren, let's start with some of the individual pieces. Reid?
Okay, am I supposed to, at this time, I'm supposed to tell you a little something here?
Yeah, tell us about this wonderful
Okay.
piece.
Well, these are salt and pepper sets, and they, for me, are like family groupings, because each component is like a member of the family. I like the fact that when you use them, you're like having a little conversation with each member of the family, and the idea is here, using this spoon, you have to pick up you have to take the cover off of either the salt or the pepper container, and you have to pick that container up, or ideally you would pick it up and use the spoon, and then to take whichever one salt or pepper that you're using, and there you're having a conversation with with 2 members of the family or 3, and so for me that's basically the way I see these. The materials that I use, in this case, oak, Paduke, sterling silver, and also antler. I've used antler here. You can see it perhaps more prominently on the spoon and the ends, the corners of the plinth. But I enjoy turning that antler, though it does kind of smell like burning hair when you do so. But these are very tiny little pieces, and it's just a joy to work so precisely. So,
hey, Reid, I'm wondering,
yeah.
Back to that last piece, just briefly, the making this elaborate presentation for Salt and Pepper, is this something that you've come up with? Is there a tradition of making elaborate salt and pepper forms like this?
No, I don't know of anything like that as far as tradition, but for me, it's just about the grouping. It's about the components and they're individual pieces, but I see it collectively as a family group. And Salt and Pepper were a nice vehicle to bring the pieces together.
Great.
And then the choice of materials is sort of like, in some cases, like getting dressed up to go out to dinner, or the little attentions to the end of the spoon, which has a little tiny bit of Paduke. You can see the red, and then barely see that little tiny piece of antler, and it's like a kid dressing up in mom's or dad's clothes, in a sense. For me, these.
That's how a lot of your work is.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren, you can go to the next one then. Sorry that I interrupted.
That's fine. Yeah. Well, this piece, this top hat piece, retro block form. I like retro, mid-century modern design, and earlier, and I particularly like old train engines from transition era from steam to electric. There's an era in there that's that is though they're steam engines, they are streamlined, and I particularly like those. And though you don't see any real relationship between what's on the screen here and those, there is maybe more of a relationship between what's showing here and 50s modern furniture, a Scandinavian design. But again, the three pieces here are again like a family unit, and the retro block form, top hat, still again harking back to family, to clothing as an embellishment maybe, and just as a like a home for family members. The three pieces have a home, and with this piece, I know it's not folks aren't able to see it at this time, but when that Purple Heart, that large Purple Heart piece is slipped over the three pots here, there's a little bit of escaping of air pressure, and it's kind of nice. It doesn't go down super slow, but it goes down slower than one might expect, and that's for me, that's it was a challenge to be able to do that. And it worked so well. I was just very pleased with that.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit. It's just when you, I noticed that when I've put it together. It's lovely.
So there you have it with that. And then this piece, again, this is family unit. These are members of a family. They don't have to be the same uh, um, nuclear family. I think I have that correct. Nuclear and George W. Bush always made that.
Yeah, nuclear, yes.
And so anyway, these could be relatives. When I was a kid, we used to all get together as relatives, as family unit, different family units, but all related. And there were similarities among us, and then there were differences among us. And so I see this piece as representative of that for me. Here we are collectively, but we're our own person and our own family. And there's a movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and in that movie there's a line by the father of the bride who says, "We're all fruit, but we're all the same," or something. We're all the same. But anyway, he was referring to how we're all different, but we're all the same.
Yeah. Hey,
And go ahead, please.
So when you're making a piece like this, are you making these ceramic forms? Do you have the whole thing planned out ahead of time, or did you make these and then think, boy, these would make a great grouping. Maybe now I'll make a wooden plinth for them to sit on. Or did you have this whole thing conceptualized beforehand?
Well, I have the concept, the conceptualization, but I don't always have the appropriate pieces. And so I do have to select the pieces, but you can see some are glazed similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And one stands alone as a different glaze from like the 2 or the 3. But I do I make a number of pieces of a similar type and then select from those. And with this piece, it was always intended to be on a plinth, and I do like the fact that though the caps on them are similar, yet they're different. And so when you look at the 2 in the back there on the center and right, they're very similar. It could be a couple of the kids that are there at the gathering, and or the 2 with the knobs. I see them again as just as family, and that plinth could be somebody's home or their backyard, or it could be the park, but it's just a gathering place.
I think it's so interesting, this conversation about you adding this idea of them being figures, and it's going to make me look at your work so differently now. I'm going to think of all of them as little family units.
Well, I do see many of my pieces as family. I mean, as not sentient beings, but as beings of some sort.
Yeah. And then Sandra's work is always, and then I always feel like I'm out in nature finding the most beautiful things, whether it's a little pebble on the beach or some driftwood or, orchids and all these things. And, Sandra, often I think as artists, we will look at something in nature and think, I can never make anything as beautiful as this. But some of these little forms of yours really rival what nature does. So let's hear about these.
Thank you. It seems appropriate that these are the pieces that came up first, because sometimes I think about my pieces talking to each other. And so when I made these pieces, I thought about them together. You can see the swirl in each of them is going the opposite direction. And that was very intentional so that they could talk to each other. The way first of all, I work with a porcelain called Southern Ice, which is a very translucent high fire porcelain from Australia, and it's the best porcelain I found. and I cool things very slowly in the kiln to bring out that translucency so it really can melt more. These pieces were constructed from a long piece of clay that I pinched and then brought it around and spiraled it. So where the edges came together is where I started developing those fins. And it's just lovely to sit and pinch out and make things thinner and thinner and eventually carve them. But my things are very much done in steps. So I might be working on one of these forms for a week, and I might work at it for 15 minutes or half hour or so for one period, and then put it away under a cottage cheese container, which you'll see later. And then bring it out the next day and work on it some more. But they really need to they get wetter as I work on them, and then they set up and I can start working again. So one person said to me in seeing one of these forms one time, they wished they were small enough to slide down the spiral. So I thought that was a great comment.
Yeah, that is. That's great.
Yeah. This one is called Standing Mobius. And if you look at my pieces closely, you'll notice that a number of them have Mobius elements. And for those of you who do not know what the term Mobius means, if you think about it, taking a long strip of paper and bring the ends together, you'll have a circle that's an inside and an outside. But if you flipped one of those ends by 180 degrees and put it back together, you would have to, it's sort of an infinity, and you have to go around twice to get back to exactly the same spot. And so on the left-hand part of this piece, I have actually, in pinching it, I pinched it and then cut it and then turned those pieces and continued to pinch. But I really love it how the outside becomes the inside, becomes the outside. It just has a wonderful life-giving force to it. And you'll also notice this piece, and I'll discuss this later, the shadow that was cast by the sunshine here going through the piece really helps inform the viewer of what that piece is about. And you can see the translucency of that piece. I just love translucency. And it's a pretty dynamic piece, but probably more dynamic because it's Mobius. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's okay to go to that. This one's called Through the Hole. And I'm having the best time with shadows these days. It's great. But this was a really difficult, fragile piece to do because it just wanted to snap. It was a more drawn out piece that was looped around like a figure eight and then joined. And I imagine I did not join it right at that thinnest section, but still I don't get 100% success rate with such pieces. And I've done fewer than 5. And I don't know, I maybe have gotten 2 that have worked. And just in the last week or so, I tried doing it instead of creating a hole and putting something through it. I actually pinched it so that it was all solid in there, and then carved a hole and carved the piece down. And it's going to be interesting to see if it works. But
so you don't know until you open the kiln.
No. And they can crack at any point. Sometimes they crack real early. Sometimes I can be just about ready to sign it and go snap. I was sanding a piece a week ago, and I bisque fire up to about 1800 degrees and then do more sanding to make sure these things get really smooth. I was all finished sanding this, which had taken an hour. And I think because of the powder on my hands from the sanding, it just popped out of my hands. And that was a bit of a blow.
Yeah.
But I can lose them anytime.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make them cruder and more resilient. Just to, it's worth it.
It is worth it. Yes.
But I was thrilled when the sun came in that way. So.
And it's some of these new smooth. I'm sorry, Anne.
Oh, I was going to ask Sandra about the surface of some of these new pieces. You've been using. It seems like you've been making the surface more smooth, where a lot of your work in the past had a lot of texture on it. And
right. It's just a wonderful contrast, but they're sometimes you think, oh, they're just smooth and they don't take as much time as a carved piece, and that's absolutely false. Trying to get them smooth is a really, really hard thing. But I like the contrast. It's sort of bone-like. So
yeah,
you were going to say something, Teresa.
Actually, Anne is intuitive, because I was going to ask something very, very similar. So, yeah.
Well, I find this kind of interesting that Sandy has to wait until she opens the kiln to find out whether or not she's successful. And yet these pieces don't quite look like that. Whereas myself, as a wood firer, I definitely have to wait until I open the kiln to find out whether or not I'm successful.
Yeah.
And excuse me, about a 65% success rate for me is pretty good.
Reid, are you going to have pictures of your wood kiln and such?
Oh, I can send you some images of the.
Okay, but you're not going to show them today.
No, I have to apologize. I meant to put up or send Lauren a couple of pictures of the kiln and a couple of other images, and I completely forgot. So we the day that we were going to send all of this off, and I forgot, was the day that my wife got her first COVID vaccine, and we were so excited. I think it just superseded everything.
That's all right. Well, we have some great videos, Lauren. Or some stills, or here we have video. Great.
So today I'm working on small pieces. I work in the wood shop in the winter, but in the summer I work in my studio. I can actually open a door to the shop and have the outside come in. I like that a lot. I work in the ceramic studio, that is, in the summer. And so I make a lot of pots in the summer, have one or two kiln firings, depending on the number of pieces and the sizes. Of course, I get, pieces like this tiny little thing in the, a lot of them in the kiln. Right now, I'm also looking at these small bowls. I like making these very much. But summertime is ceramics, wintertime is wood. And it's a time for me to assess the work that I've done in the summer and make some decisions about how to present the pieces. Let's see here. Right now I was working on the lathe, turning a cover for a small piece, and this little piece would fit on there's a cover here that I'm making, and the piece will fit on. I check them this way. Also, as I said, these bowls, I like to make multiples. And so I do a lot of bowls. These are 3 different, sizes. Mama bear, baby bear, mama bear, papa bear. I just like making multiples. They're family sorts of pieces for me. And here's one. I'm just starting to kind of get back to this. Here's a turning tool. Oops, what's yeah, there. Okay, this is bronze. And what I did was take a mold from an original bowl, little bowl, and then cast wax into that mold, and then I have these bronze pieces cast at a foundry for me. And so I'm just starting to maybe get back into some of that, into the metal as well. I turn in the wintertime. I work here in the wood shop. I turn a lot of pieces on the lathe at small work at 935 revolutions a minute. And I love turning. And you'll see in the show a lot of turned wood that complements the ceramic pieces. And of course, the ceramic pieces complement the wood, I hope, as well. This is a bunch of little pieces that are waiting for covers. I have a few here. Let's see once. A few here that already have covers. Bring these out. Here's one similar to the one I was making a cover for. And you can see by the size of my hand and the size of the pieces how tiny they are. The reason I like making these small ones, among other things, is that I can think about shape, form. I can also test glazes on small things like this. I can warm up when I'm at the wheel. These are, for me, these are a good warm up. And of course, they allow me in the wintertime to work here on the lathe or in the wood shop. I like making these tiny knobs that actually are glued into the cover. There's a little tiny hole drilled in the cover, and there's a little tiny extension known as a tenon on the underside of this knob, and that's glued in. So the knob itself is not just glued onto the surface of the cover. And here's another from the cinematographer, who happens to be my wife, who's very patient with me. Thank you, Pat. Asking about the woods and whether I wanted to say something about the wood that I use. So quickly, I will say I like using exotic woods. For one, they're oftentimes much denser, harder, finer grained. They are, in some cases, more expensive, or they're also more endangered. But the woods that I use, every piece of exotic wood that I use has been CITES certified, which means that it's been imported legally. The pieces that I use are, by and large, cut off waste product or waste material from a company that uses these exotics, which are also considered tone woods, by the way. I'll give you an example here, how hard they are and the sort of tone they could make. So where was I here? Well, anyway, I use these woods, but these are all scrap woods, and it's a good way to use them up and not have to cut more trees than necessary. Ecologically, I think it's a sound solution. So the woods that I do use as exotics, African blackwood, cocobolo, zircote, and a few others, a handful of others, along with native hardwoods, red oak, white oak, cherry, black cherry, and elm. I like red elm a lot. So that's about it as far as the woods are concerned. Excuse me. And there are a couple of smaller or bigger bowls here that I've just been looking at for boxes. I oftentimes box up pieces, and so when I do that, I have to make a selection of bowls that I want to put in a box and make the box for. Let's see what's here. So there's a small bowl. Oh, it's a fabric. Small ceramic tea bowl. And I like this bowl very much. That's why I selected it to make a box for it. You'll notice in the show, very quickly here, you'll notice in the show that I do turn some laminated maple boxes with a Cadillac cover. This is the blank I make up, which is laminate maple. I don't glue all of these laminates myself, but I buy the stock laminated like this, and then I build up the laminates as I need bigger stock. From this piece right here, I perhaps cut into a couple of pieces and then break the corners off on a jointer, a machine here in the shop. And that's the starting point then for the lathe. And ultimately, I turn it like this, and then I can cut these pieces apart as needed size-wise. So that's it. I'm a happy potter and woodworker, and I just love making everything for the show. I hope you folks enjoyed the show, and thanks to Abel and all the folks there for giving me this opportunity, along with Sandra Byers, who is an amazing ceramic artist, and I love her work. As I've said before to other folks, she, among a few other potters, make the kind of work I wish I could. But this is my voice, and so I do make it the way I have to. And so enjoy the show.
And we just have one other short clip of the turning process. See how much spit there is there.
Wow.
So I do like to hold the tolerances fairly tight.
Yeah.
I was just in the process of turning the cover. I'd turned the box already, and I do have to allow a little bit of wiggle room, so to speak, because woods do move. They shrink or expand, and so normally I don't make them quite this tight when they're finished, but it's fun to do it on the lathe here, and there you have it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Reid.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, really.
Oh, it's great. So Lauren, what do we have next?
Next is a video of Sandra's studio. So this is the whole walk up to the old schoolhouse. See beautiful landscape. And where is this again, Sandy?
It's a little town of about 350 people called Rock Springs. This is the building in which we live. It was built, the front part was built about 1900. You'll notice as we're approaching it there on the at least we can see it on the right. There's a little on the left. There's a long wing that's 2 classrooms long that's attached to the back of the building, and that was added in 1927. So it's basically an old 6-room school building in which we have a gallery space and a studio space. Here we've come up with the driveway, and that's our building. And the front part, it's the old part. The red brick is the new. And we live upstairs there. Have 2 of the classrooms. First floor in front is, here we are in our studio, in our throwing studio, as we put it. So we have a number of wheels. Win and I both share the space. You'll notice a big white box sort of there. That's my damp room. Win can dry his work slowly in there, and this is the room in which I work. And you'll see some little ovens there. I dry work there, or use it for preparing to glaze. So I think we're getting to my door to my, this is the door to the damp room. So I do a lot of work in this room. Wynn made sure I got a good chair. And this is my humidifier. That's really important because I keep the room humidified, and that means the work isn't drying out so fast. That really is a great help. So this is me pinching my work. Yeah.
So you really are in this room most of the time when you're making the pieces?
Yes. I have a longer video starting with pinching the piece and then going on to, this is our gallery space, not totally set up, but it's a combination of Wynn's work and my work.
What a great space.
It's lovely.
How long have you owned the schoolhouse?
Since 1980. We were just looking for a place that we could afford in southern Wisconsin, and we found this space. So this is Wynn has lots of wear carts for his work. He also seems to he collects library shelving and library chairs. We each have our things. Yeah. I think this is going to be the start of the process video. And so I start out pinching clay and try to make a very small vessel. And each of these sections is going to be a reduced, presentation of how long I actually spend working on that kind of thing. So we're going to be, right now I'm trying to create a vessel, but soon it will be sort of starting to shape it.
Yeah. And this is speeded up quite a bit, the video.
Yeah.
So people don't think that you can quickly, do it.
Yeah. The favorite question from our audience is, how long did it take to make that piece? And I'm sure you've gotten that, Reid. And I guess one answer could be 40 years. Some people put a clock to it and record. So here I've taken this vessel that I've created and started pushing in. And I realized that what I do is I pinch from the outside, but I'm also supporting my fingers from the inside as well. So I'm pushing out and pushing in at the same time to create edges. So what I'm making here is what I call a nut-like piece. And so eventually it will have these swirls that are pinched in. So it's really a very swirling piece.
So Sandra, you must have an idea in your mind, at least, of the direction a piece is taking. Do you have sketches ahead of time? How much do you know ahead of time before you start at all where a piece will be headed?
Okay. I do not sketch. My ceramics teacher at Cornell was good friends with the drawing teacher. And she said, well, just tell your drawing teacher that you're a three-dimensional person. And, but with this particular piece that I was working on, I got an email from a good customer of mine saying, we just moved to Brussels, and unfortunately, our nut-like piece was lost in the move. And so I'm working on a nut-like piece for him. So I have a sense that it's going to have swirls in it. Some of these longer sections are going to be broken up. So I have some sense, but not right on. And then with other pieces, I'll just take a ball of clay and start putting my fingers into it and creating holes and pinching. And it just, I don't know where it's going to go. And I also I'll sometimes look at a piece after it's all finished and not really be able to recreate it because of the twists and such. Here I'm in the video, I'm defining the lines in this piece. And then I'm starting to carve it. I think I'm defining those lines more with a tool. So I guess in answer to your question, Teresa, sometimes I know pretty much how this is going to go, and other times I really don't. And I just have to go with the flow and see what happens. There's a wonderful, very talkative old professor named Bill Daly in Philadelphia, who's just the best fella, and he's a great teacher. But he said you have to have proportion in your heart and keep on, and he's right. And so I think I try to think about proportion and whether it looks right all the time I'm working. So yeah, I'm just defining here.
It's really fun to see them evolve because, you know, once they're finished, they look like they always existed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is part of the magic of them. And so to see them come together like this is really marvelous.
Thank you. Wynn's the one who shot the video here, and I really appreciate his patience.
Yeah.
So I think that sometime in the near future, I might try to figure out a way to mount an iPhone on my head so I can my forehead and see if we can get some video that way. I think because what I'm getting to see while I'm working is great. Here I'm obviously cutting the top, and it's just a slow process.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done. But, you know, I'm cutting obviously in tune with the shape I've formed.
Well, and watching your hands with these tools right now, it also seems somewhat effortless, but you've been doing this for decades.
Right. Yeah. And here I am carving those textures that I guess I'm known for. Speaking about doing things for decades, for the first couple of decades or decade and a half of working with porcelain, I was essentially throwing and then altering those forms. And then one day it sort of dawned on me that everything I did was round. Here are those pieces when they're completely they're still dry, but they're there. But I wanted you to see the forms after they were completely carved. And then I think we're going to have a shot of what this kind of piece looks like after it was fired. There we go. So the light really comes through it, and you can see that texture with the light coming through it. And I think that's great. But what I was going to say was, after a decade or so of just throwing and realizing everything was round, realized that if I could pinch, I could make things that didn't have that basic roundness to them. And that started pinching. And so I was a better pincher than I would have been when I just started working in clay. I had, a lot of time, experienced clay in my hands, but it's a great, quiet way to work.
Much like how Reid is a fantastic woodworker and ceramicist, you, in addition to being a ceramicist, are a fantastic photographer.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about these scenes?
Sure. A long time ago, somebody in Sheboygan, a guy named Jake Jacobson, who was a great friend of Ruth Kohler's, took me under his wing and taught me how to photograph. And upon that trip to Sheboygan, he built me a light box, which is what you'll see in the upper left-hand corner hanging over. And so this is a four-sided box with an open top and an open bottom, and the bottom is covered with muslin fabric. And you can see the strings at the top there, and they go up to the ceiling and across the ceiling and come down, and I can raise and lower and tilt that box in relation to my work. And you can see that it's really dark behind the space where I'm photographing, which is a great dark backdrop. And there are some mirrors there that I bounce things, but Jake taught me a lot. But at this point, I'm using that setup, but I also essentially chase the sunlight around the building as it during the day. And we went for a stretch of about 3 weeks without any sunshine this winter. And I was so joyous when the sun finally came out. So here are some pictures of in the window in the room that I'm in right now. So you saw the gallery space, and this is just taking my paper and setting things up. And I think I'll show you a couple other places in the next images of, So here are two pictures of the same piece. And I just waited, I took the picture on the right, but then realized that there was that possibility of concentric circles. And that was taken very late in the day, but it just brings me great joy. So, and here, the one on the right, I think is really cool. On Instagram, I saw that they were, the Metropolitan in New York has a site where you could post something, and it was called Meet My Shadow or Met My Shadow. And I posted this picture because I think I love the longness of the shadow, but also the fact that that little dot on the right side is an indication that there's a hole in that piece that you can't see. So the idea that a photograph and shadows can inform the viewer of a piece is pretty exciting to me. And the same, you're not seeing anything more in the lower section, but I think the shadow with that piece is very cool. That's a piece that you had in your gallery. So, yeah. And this one's called perforated fin. And I just love the way the light comes through and creates all those lines of dots. And there's another full picture of a nut-like form. So.
Just great.
So I in talking with you guys last Tuesday, I was just thrilled to hear, that people were really excited about what you can do with photography and informing yourself and your viewer with what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just, your pictures of your work are just stunning.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. So I don't know if, Lauren, we're done with all the videos now, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So, let's open it up. And I don't know if anybody watching has any questions for either Reid or Sandra, but we are happy to answer. Well, they can try to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question for Reid.
Oh, good.
How it seems like in a way, an interesting dilemma, but something you've learned to live with this summer ceramics, winter wood. And are you planning out pieces as you're throwing and then saying 6 months later, now it's time to finish that piece?
You mean like the finished pieces in the show?
Yeah, I mean,
no, I don't do that. I have certain forms that I like to make, ceramic forms,
okay,
and that I'm very comfortable with. But then that in some cases I'm also challenged by, and I make a variety of forms that a number of maybe a certain type that are similar. They're not all the same. They're not identical, other than maybe being a similar height or something like that, or width. But I just see these as all like family members, and then you select those family members that you need to complete the piece, to make the family. I might say I used to throw very large work, and for me, very large, 25, 35 pounds of clay. But I broke my back. I had an accident. I had a fall and broke my back, and I couldn't really handle big amounts of clay. And that's what triggered the smallness. And I like the fact that both your work and my work is small, and yours more precious perhaps than mine. But I like that aspect of smallness now, and I've really grown to enjoy working in that way. So it's just I think it's just that visceral. It comes from within, and I surprise myself, as I'm sure you do, when something when the work comes out of you and speaks.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm not seeing any questions yet on Facebook, but just a huge outpouring of folks just saying how fantastic both of your work is, and lots of support through there. I have a question from Donna Miller for Reid. What kind of clay are you using, and what kind of glaze, Reid?
Well, the clay I use, I usually I use a mix of clays. I buy from a supplier in Minneapolis. I buy a bee clay that is used for wood firing, and then I add things to it. I don't want to mix my own clay from scratch anymore, and the Continental clay in Minneapolis, if I give them a little shout out here, makes a very good clay body that I'm very pleased with, very happy with using. And then the additives might be feldspar rocks, very, very tiny little bits of feldspar, or some sands. And also I use chicken grit in my clay, larger larger bumps on the clay surface oftentimes are chicken grit, which in some cases I have to grind a little bit more because it's a very sharp material. It's a granite material. And what was the rest of that question, Lauren?
What kind of glazes are you
Oh,
using?
the glazes. Basically, I use a Schoonover glaze, and then I overglaze that sometimes. A Schoonover glaze is a very stable glaze. It doesn't run easily, and it grips the surface of the pot well when I'm glazing, and then I overglaze that with other glazes that are perhaps a little more fluid or more changeable. Schoonover glazes are not so visually changeable. There's a sort of a range that's standard, and then what I put over it might be a copper red, or it might be a blue, or whatever, and those glazes are more affected by the ash that is moving through the kiln with the wood firing. So
Also,
I hope that answers it.
Yeah, and it makes me, I always try to think about people who don't know a lot about ceramics. Speaking of, glazes and clay bodies and things. So Sandra, for people who might not know, is there any glaze on your pieces? Because people might not understand that.
Okay. With the white pieces, if they're vessels, I will put a soft white matte glaze on the inside, just for that tactile and visual contrast between a glazed surface and an unglazed surface that's on the outside. Thinking a bit like a seashell. People might have seen my other work, which you've had in the gallery, and you will continue to have, of more colorful pieces. And those pieces are glazed with what I call a microcrystalline matte glaze. They have very tiny crystals on the surface that grow because of the composition of the glaze, but also because I cool them very slowly and hold them at temperatures where those crystals can grow.
Great.
I might say I also use a microcrystalline matte glaze or semi-matte glaze. I do fire a crystalline glaze in the wood kiln, and with interesting results.
I would like to see that.
Yeah, with interesting results.
Reid, do you ever not glaze the outside of your pieces and just have wood ash result?
Well, my firings are short enough that I really do not get a large buildup of ash, a large deposit of ash on the pieces. But there are pieces that I have fired sans glaze, and just maybe if it's a bottle that holds, like a sake bottle or sake cups or something, I may glaze the inside with a Schoonover and then just leave the outside raw, and do hope for some good ash deposit. And it depends on the placement in the kiln, of course. There are places in the kiln where I might get more ash deposit than others. So it's sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes it's sometimes it's also a crapshoot.
Oh, well, great. So Lauren, Anne, any other questions?
No.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for this afternoon then. I just want to mention to everyone that the show Meticulous will be available at Abel Contemporary Gallery through April 11th. And we are open regular hours, Tuesday through Sunday from 10 to 5. We are requiring people to wear masks, and we are in a very large space. So we haven't had a problem having to limit numbers of people, but we certainly are not allowing there to be crowds of people in here at one time. And if people are more comfortable, they are welcome to call and make a private appointment as well. And for anyone who is not venturing out in the world right now, or they are far away, the entire show is available on our website, abelcontemporary.com. The video that Lauren shot that was at the beginning of this reception is available on their page for Meticulous, as well as every single piece. You can shop online, you can view the show online, and more information about both of these marvelous artists. So thank you.
May I say one thing? May I interrupt, Teresa?
Yeah.
Okay. Pat said that apparently somebody wanted to see bobbins. This is our big boy. He's the biggest. He's the youngest, and of three cats that we have, and he's a rescue like our other two, and he is the biggest baby in the world. And so there's Bobbins. The others are Billy and Little Bit. And just as a kind of a, because I was watching myself, of course, and I would tell you, I know I'm speaking a little bit funny, but I'm waiting on I broke 2 front teeth. And so my speech pattern is a little different now. And I'm laughing at myself. I didn't see that video that we sent you. I'm waiting. My dentist is in the process of producing 2 implants. And so my speech is a little odd. I hope it's not offensive to anybody.
Well, I didn't notice at all, Reid. You sound just great. Yeah.
I did. So anyway, Bobbins and I are signing off. And thank you so much, Teresa and Anne and Lauren and Abel Contemporary Gallery. This is such a great honor. Thank you so much. And Sandy, what an honor to be showing with you. Thank you so much.
The feeling is mutual, and thank you to all of you. You've done an amazing job. It's an honor to be showing the beautiful space. Oh,
great. Well, we're so delighted. Thank you both so much. It's a beautiful pairing. The show is stunning, and we couldn't be more pleased. And thank you for doing this today and putting those videos together. It means so much for people to see where and how you work. So
thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks again. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you again soon.
Gonna go make chili.
Okay, sounds great.
Bye-bye.